I'm a bit weird today because this is bittersweet. I'm looking forward to going through the episode and I'm looking forward to breaking it down for you because that is one of the things I love that I get to do with my role here. But when it's the last episode of not just a season, but of a show, it's very bittersweet feelings. You know, I've had a couple of these now. We had Life Itself for Discovery. We had The Last Generation for Star Trek Picard. And for all we know, although, no, I'm not even going to put it out into the ether. There is another show we are waiting to hear if it's been renewed. But the new Next Generation is, as far as we know, the last episode of Star Trek Lower Decks. And Lower Decks has done so much for Star Trek. It's been a lot of fun. It's been more Easter eggs than I know what to do with. And I think it's helped to bring so many more people into the Star Trek community as well. I will be so sorry to see it go. I do not believe for a second that this is the end. And in fact, I'm really happy to say this. We had a chance to speak to Mike McMahon, obviously show creator, show runner, during the week. That is available on the various places you get our podcasts now, where we spoke about the plans for what would have happened in season 6, season 7 and beyond. And I mean, Mike is not short of ideas. Shall we dive into the episode, The New Next Generation? Last week, our minds were collectively blown by all of the different cameos that happened in the penultimate episode of Lower Decks, and I'm still reeling from T'Pol, okay? And I mean, and again, she wasn't even the only one, but still, it's been a whopper of a season. But it all leads up to this. We get our time-honored previously on, and we get clips from nearly every episode in the season, and obviously so much of it comes to fruition in The New Next Generation. We have the arrival, if you like, of what William Boimler sends into our universe. Thanks a bunch, mate. Really appreciate it. This rift is surrounded by, effectively we're going to call it a Schrodinger Effect for the rest of the episode. I mean, if anything was a MacGuffin to just start playing with, what if we do this and what if we do that? This is the perfect tool for it. The Klingon fleet ruled by Rela, who is, of course, the sister of Barg and Dorg, those two Klingons that were killed by Ma'a, she's not very happy about that. And her wee little ragtag fleet encounters the rift, which is surrounded by a Schrodinger effect. One of her ships is a little bit slow in getting away from these waves and gets transformed into, wait for it, Discovery-era bird of prey, and the Klingons on board get turned into Discovery-era Klingons. Now, before the comments begin going, this confirms Discovery's in another universe. No, it doesn't, because it confirms that it's in another universe, as is T'Pol, as is Garak, as is Bashir. There are different versions of different things in different universes. No, this does not say that the Prime universe and the Discovery universe are different universes. Okay? Moving swiftly along. This Discovery-era bird of prey, however, is very quickly destroyed on impact as it crashes into Relga's ship, which I really like Relga's ship, actually. I really do like it. It looks like a kind of a cross between our standard bird of prey and a D5 class battlecruiser variant from Enterprise. Yeah, it's pretty. But anyway, this gives her all the ammunition she needs to claim that, someone destroyed one of our ships. How can I turn this to my advantage? Meanwhile, over on the Cerritos, the first thing, so it's a kind of a quiet day. There's not an awful lot going on, which means Shax and Anna have time to go to the holodeck to play Sexy Treasure Island. Up. As long as I get to be Long John This show, is that the first time that she said she loves him? Like that. But meanwhile, just behind them, you've got Rutherford, T'Lyn, and Tendi are working on their various science projects when Boimler and Mariner come and join them. Because everyone's so chill, we can ascertain pretty quickly that this is just a few seconds before William Boimler's message from last week arrives on our Boimler's pad. In this moment, it is very fun just to see these Lieutenant JGs relaxing. As I myself am just an ensign, I can only imagine what it's like to be a Lieutenant JG who has time to relax. What is relaxation? What is time? But anyway, I'm happy to see it. Taken up, everyone. Unfortunately, poor Rutherford is a little bit frustrated because it seems that he's having connection issues with his Oculus implant and the systems on the Cerritos. And this is one thing I'm going to say. I came close to downing Rutherford's arc in this episode. Obviously, if you're watching this, you've seen the episode. If you haven't seen the episode, hit pause here, go and watch it, come back, okay? It did feel, I know we had that previous episode where his implant was struggling to connect, but I'll be honest with you, I'd kind of forgotten about that until it was in the previously on, because it's not really something that's been discussed over the season. So I did feel that his arc, I like where it got to, but it was a little bit rushed. And it begins here, and so seemingly out of the blue, you have Rutherford so frustrated with the Cerritos. Now we get a nice fun gag where Tendi says to the Cerritos, oh, you know, he didn't mean it, oh girl, and he goes, yes, I did. And it kind of doesn't feel like Rutherford. You know, it's quickly distracted by William Boimler's message coming through, and I know we saw it last week, but it does not make me enjoy it any less, and it is a massive up for Boimler's we're all gonna die! Ah! And away he runs. And Mariner's like, wait, what's going on? What? They run out of the mess hall, but also not before two things. One is when Mariner's sitting there and they're trying to tell her, Tillin and Tendi are telling her about their project. They're working with corp apples, and she's like, come on, you're messing with me. I feel like this is every time you try and explain something that's really niche in Star Trek to someone who's maybe new to the franchise. And they're like, come on, like, that can't be serious. You're messing with me now. So that's an up from me, because I think everyone probably watching this has probably been in that position at one point or another in their life. And then Boimler has his seemingly out of nowhere freak out. He runs out, Mariner follows, and Tendi goes, is it just me, or does he seem to be freaking out an awful lot with that pad? And Tillin just goes, it is not just you. Up. We do enjoy a bit of Tillin sass. There's one thing that really frustrates me across any property. It's not just Star Trek, it's anything where we, the audience, know what's going on, but the characters, or some of the characters, don't. So we have to have the scene of explaining it to the other characters. It can be done well. It does sometimes drag things to a halt. Not only do we not get that, so taken up there, but Freeman immediately believes Mariner and Boimler and goes on to say that, of course I trust you, you're my best officers, we'll act on this immediately. Latinum up. There it is, folks. The Latinum up for the final episode, for the foreseeable future, but for the final episode of Lower Decks is the trust that has been engendered on the Cerritos, the trust that Freeman has in Mariner and Boimler when you think about their arcs over the entirety of the show, that when they come to her and when they're earnest and when they really show what they mean, they're believed. And not only that, she says, you're my best officers. I got such a happy feeling right down through. And then not only that, I'm also throwing in an up there for Ransom's little proud look on his face as well. This is a crew that gels so well together, but I mean, in Mariner and Freeman's case, quite literally, this is a family, but also you really get that sense of family here. And also selfishly, we don't have to go through the, hi everyone, stop for a second there, here's what you missed on Lower Decks last week. You know, we don't do that. And I think that's really clever and really, really smart, really well handled. And that is my Latinum up of the week. Now, our very connected B-plot of the episode features on Ma'a and Malor, who are both getting an up for this episode. And also, Sam Witwer, stop following me around, you flirt. Because, of course, Sam Witwer returns to voice Malor as well, which, I mean, I really enjoyed this character. I think at the time when we were talking about Farewell to Farms, there was initially I felt one way and then I felt another, and then ironically it had become, I think, I spent the longest on that ups and downs, I think, out of any other on this season until this episode, and so it's kind of really stayed with me. And yeah, so lovely to see them again. And Malor is his normal self, Ma'a is his normal self, and then out of warp drops Relga. Now, she has every reason to be annoyed at Ma'a, unless, of course, you want to be honorable, in which case she has no reason to be annoyed at Ma'a, but anyway. And she's like, oh, you destroyed one of my ships. And they're like, we drive a van. We didn't destroy one of your ships. And she's like, yeah, but there's enough truth in it that, no one will give out to me if I do destroy his. There is no honor here. She is very much Durossing her way all over these two. Ma'a really needs to speak to a therapist about just how quickly he is ready to throw his life away on any glorious mission. So immediately, the first thing he does, like, okay, we're going to pilot straight into Relga's bridge. And Malor is a bit like, today is not a good day to die. What the hell is the matter with you? And pilots out of there. If I were a Klingon, I might be like, Malor, what are you doing? I'm not a Klingon. Why isn't up? That's just smart. They are straight away out of there. Meanwhile, on the Cerritos, Starfleet has been briefed on what's going on with, the Boimlers. I love how they just blame the Boimlers for this, even though it is no way their fault. But they're just like, oh my God, the Boimlers. The connection between the Boimlers is the reason this whole thing is happening. I mean, is it tenuous? Yeah, it's tenuous. Do I care? No, not really. We get some nice name drops to say the Enterprise is on the way. Cool. But this is not an episode that's about non-Lower Decks related characters and scenarios. And actually right, bear with me just 2 seconds while I say, last week, I finished the episode by going, oh, I wonder where this leaves us. Maybe we'll get a cameo there, but on my first watch, because sometimes, I watch an episode a few times before we do this, but on my first watch, I got to the end and I went, I'm really glad that we didn't get the legacy cameos. And I'm not changing history. I'm not saying, well, Sean, you said this last week. I did say this last week, but it's the last episode ever. Last of this season, I might be like, oh, come on, we could have done one more cameo legacy, or like, look what they've done, what could they do next? But for the final episode of the show ever, they did a really smart thing and they kept it in the family. Because at this stage, Ma'a has been around enough times that he's pretty much part of the family. And Malor, hey, if Ma'a's part of the family, Malor's part of the family. That's how it works. And our threat of the episode I'm fine with that being Relga, sure, why not? I know there will be people who will be disappointed that we didn't get legacy cameos. Enterprise gets name dropped, but we don't get the Enterprise crew. And that's, I get that, I do, but I'm not downing that because for the last ever episode of Lower Decks, it should be about the Lower Decks. During this briefing with Starfleet, they coined the phrase Schrodinger's field. Up. What else are you supposed to call it? Could be anything, could be everything. I like it. And then we get our, our groundwork laid for, oh, well, it's the connection between William Boimler who sent this here. And Mariner is like, what the Boims, you sent it here. He's like, I didn't, William did. And everyone's like, oh, thanks, Boimler. It's like, it wasn't me, it was William. And hey, I get their frustrations because one act of extreme trust could damn an entire universe. I'm with them on this one. Up. What the Boims? Starfleet sends them a shed. Starfleet sends them a shed. Starfleet sends them a set of shield modulations, which, if installed properly and in time, should protect the ship from any Schrodinger's effect. This is not only Star Trek, but this is Lower Decks, and it's a Kali class. They'll do the best they can. So we then get to see, taken up by the way, Ollie is back again, now in engineering gold, which I'm actually, yeah, she looks right, and also it's a nice arc for her as well. I'm going to come back to her as well. She says, yes, we can get the shield modulations done, but there's going to be a problem. Some of the hull is going to be exposed. What do you think that's setting up? But they do make a point of saying the people should be fine. So we're not going to see, Freeman transform into a giant fly or something like that. Couldn't tell you what happens to the ship, though. My absolute hats off to the animators for this exchange when Freeman says, you know, knowing the crew is working around the clock to get the modifications done, okay, we'll be fine as long as there's no delay. Captain, there's a ship dropping out of warp. And they've just animated her like, you know, up. Because you've got Malor and Ma'a, of course, have flown to the Cerritos. Because up. I need to speak to my Chadich. How do you, like, just lower decks? After a hurried explanation on board the ship as to who Ma'a and Malor are, why they're there, Freeman's a bit like, okay, fine, yeah, we're allies, you can have asylum, but we really don't have time for this. And I do have to question, why'd you stop the ship? I can understand stopping the ship to beam them aboard, even though you can transport at warp, but why didn't they just immediately continue on then? I mean, it might have built them a few seconds, but still. But no, they're still stood in place when Relga's ships arrive. So, well, listen, okay, we'll hold off for a second. We'll hold off. I will say, however, count the ships. So you've got Relga's big bird of prey, and you've got 3 little birds of prey. All right? Okay. Keep that in mind. Things go south pretty quickly, but not before Relga hails the ship, and what am I looking at here? It was in the opening. Am I looking at like a Chihuahua version of a Targ? Am I looking at the Alpha 177 K9? You know, the one from The Enemy Within, the infamous dog. That also, this is really dark. That dog's severed head turned up, stuffed on a wall in Trelane's house in the Squire of Gothos. I choose to believe that's a teddy. You cannot prove me wrong. La 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 la. Of course it's a Chihuahua Targ. Why wouldn't this Klingon have a handbag dog? Or like a blood bag dog, whatever you would call that on Kronos. Either way, I think it's really cool. In the spirit of the Alliance, Freeman gives Relga the shield modifications. Perhaps not the best foresight, but also a captain's supposed to honor an alliance. Okay, Relga does not have time for this, because Relga needs to use the excuse of the destruction of her ship, or her underling's ship, to then charge Ma'a and Malor with being murderers and criminals. And we're going to pause for the most obvious faked message in the world. Nice to kind of see you, Alonzo Freeman. And back to Relga again. And it's all very, very silly, but quite frankly, the bit when, you know, her officer walks up and said, here's a pad with the shield modulations, and she just slaps it out of his hand, because it's so obvious she's not here for any of that. Oh, just caking it up. I like Relga. She's a pain in the arse. I like her. She proves very quickly that she means business when she destroys the space van. Oh, I liked that one. That made me sad. You know, it's Enterprise D levels of Viridian 3 destruction here. But on board the Cerritos, Ma'a and Malor are ordered to the bridge because, from their point of view, Admiral Freeman has ordered them to be handed over. Unfortunately, Ma'a rocks up, but Malor doesn't. And it looks initially like he's been hidden somewhere. Oh dear. Oh dearie, dearie, dear. What could this mean? Because, you know, now you've got Klingons who are firing on the starboard bow. Ha 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 ha. And you also have a big massive rift, which we need to get to. So, I am quite glad that Freeman orders Boimler down to a certain room, because they need to get to the rift. That takes precedence. Sorry, Relga, but you may hang on there now for a minute, because, you know, the universe and all of that. So they warp off under fire from the Klingons. At what point, actually, sidebar, at what point is Starfleet and the Klingon Empire ever going to sit down and be like, when are we going to stop having little skirmishes between our ships? Because we're supposed to be allies, and yet your bird of prey fired on my Kali class. And I've seen other times, for example, when the Farragut was destroyed by Klingons as well. Stop it! We're friends or we're not. And I realise the Kilometer chords have been torn up then. Anyway, I digress. We get to the rift and the Cerritos is just about ready to go in, and there's just enough not ready with the shields that we're going to have some fun. And we do. Don't get me wrong. We do. But Malor is still missing on board the ship. As they're about to enter the rift, however, Ransom calls out that readings are getting freaky. taken up, and Freeman sends a message out to the whole crew saying, brace for weird. Up. If there were two lines that ever just summed up Star Trek Lower Decks, that was it. They go through quite the change. Well, actually, you see, when someone is growing up and getting a little bit older, they start to go through some changes. They sometimes lose a nacelle, and our Cali class becomes a Freedom class. Are you kidding me? Taken up. We've never actually seen a Freedom class before in Star Trek that isn't burning in space, because it was, please forgive my little tangent, you know me and ships, because it was designed for the best of both worlds by Gregory Jean and his workshop as just one of the graveyard of ships. A model was released by the Eagle Moss line. I'm still unpacking after the move. Just trust me when I say I have it, and it's really, really cool. And it's that single nacelled ship. Other versions that have been throughout Star Trek history, the Saladin class, the Hermes class. In Strange New Worlds, you have the Archer class. You also, of course, in the Kelvin universe, you've got the USS Kelvin itself. There are many precedents for single nacelle ships, which is why when Freeman goes, how do you even generate a stable warp field when you've only got one nacelle? And Tendi steps in really quickly. Well, actually, you really can do that. That's because that's a question that's had to be answered throughout Star Trek history, and I'm just here for it. I really like the Freedom class. And obviously this is an adapted Freedom class to fit the sort of aesthetic of Lower Decks, because what the Freedom class lacks that the Cerritos has is a deflector dish, or at least a deflector dish as recognizable as the one we see on the ship. I do love my ship tangents, as you know. The Klingons arrive really quickly right behind them. Now, remember, Relga has the shield modifications, so she seems to be fine. But one of her birds of prey, which enters behind, is not quite so lucky. And we get one of the most random cameos, technically, when that bird of prey is hit by a wave, a soliton wave from the Schrodinger field, and goes from being a bird of prey to a sailing barge. And even darker than that, it's not airtight, so all of the bodies of the Klingons float off, and you could say it's a barge of the dead. I'm gonna give an up for that one. It's a dark one. So obviously that's come over from a universe where the Klingons hadn't stolen warp drive yet. So, I mean, yeah, I'm enjoying it. But we know also it did exist in our universe as well. At least it does in Legend. So, Barge of the Dead. What are you doing, lads? Just as we are about to cut to Rutherford, Tendi, and T'Lyn, pause. Ensign Taylor walks by. It may be my last chance to give an up for a Kzinti. There it is. It leads to kind of a sad scene. Rutherford is still very frustrated, but Tendi and T'Lyn, as co-chief science officers, are not working together very well. They're being driven apart, if you will. And Tendi is getting, as she tends to, a little bit more emotional than T'Lyn is. T'Lyn advises that, first of all, raising your voice will do nothing to aid the situation, and also perhaps we should work on different things. It kind of feels like a breakup. And then we just cut to cetacean observations, cetacean operations. And we just see Boimler just gently hosing down Kimilu there. Oh, and then, Matt pops his head up and says, oh, getting a hosing down, can I get into this? And Kimilu is the one, could you save your jokes so we're not in mortal peril? Says, yeah, sorry. Proving that, yes, these beluga whales can take a situation seriously when needed. Put a pin in that. Up. At this point, Mariner and Ma'a are still looking for Malor. They catch up with Boimler, who say, is there anything on this pad that I've been carrying around forever about this? And he goes, yes, actually. In this universe, Becky Mariner hid a Klingon suspect. Of course, Ma'a hears Mariner hid and Klingon and reacts accordingly. Which is a bit like, come on, Ma'a. You should definitely think a little bit better than that. Unless he's thinking less that he's not thinking better of her, is that he's thinking as frustrated at her by going, what are you doing? And is expressing it in a very Klingon way. And as this is all happening, now we cut back to Matt and Kimilu going, that Klingon is really hot. I had noticed. Up. Out in the rift, we are going through more changes. This time, in fact, the Cerritos transforms into a Terran empire version of the ship. It's got very Sovereign class nacelles still swept underneath the ship, but with a Miranda type roll bar over it as well. We see that lovely paint job that adorns Terran ships, and it's got weapon systems. It's great. The weapon systems are offline, and Shax nearly cries, taken up. This is obviously from some version of a mirror universe where the Terran Empire hasn't fallen in the way that it did with the Cardassian, Klingon, Bajoran alliance. Whatever one basically was in the Prodigy episode Cracked Mirror, it looks like it might be that same era as well. Or, for all we know, it is also a Terran Empire that's really quietly building its fleet back up again. Either way, lovely to see it. Freeman asks, why are we changing but the Klingon ships aren't? And Anna just goes, they probably are. Klingon ships have looked the same forever. They just want to look like big birds. Oh, she's not lying. Boimler, Mariner and Ma'a arrive on the bridge, Ma'a demanding to know where Malor is because he's like, this one hid him. This pad claims that Mariner has hidden Malor, which finally causes Boimler to see that for all of the good that has come from the pad, you can't live your life by how another version of you lived it. So he snaps the pad up. It was good while it lasted. It really was. But Ma'a is so enraged, even though Mariner and Boimler have just gone best friendies, he is ready to punch the answer out of her, puts his arm straight down, and is stopped by Ransom. Up. And Ma'a is so confused to say, how are you able? How are you so strong? High intensity interval training, baby. And there's no, I'm going to win this fight. Ransom is just, I'm reminding you, stop. Stop it. You're being silly. Give it over. And it is at this point that Ransom reveals he's the one who hid Malor, because he knew, or at least heavily suspected, there was something wrong with that Freeman message. And by hiding Malor himself, he could give Freeman plausible deniability. And she's not happy about this, but I have to say, yeah, fair play. That's captain level thinking there, Ransom. To Anna, having just gone, ha, I knew it, goes, I wish there was some sort of Kirk level deviant trick that we could use to get the upper hand. But of course, the Klingons have the shield modifications as well. So first of all, Kirk trick taken up there. And Billups is able to go, hold on, I think I've got the answer here. We cut to Meredith holding the tether of Ensign Ollie, who is charging her lightning bolt. She's pulling it back and she throws it Kamehameha style, and it completely surrounds the head of the bird of prey, causing a torpedo to fire back in on itself. Now, for anyone who just thought that I had a little brain fart moment there, this seems to be very Dragon Ball Z inspired. It's very anime, this whole scene. And it's also not the only anime inspired moment in this episode. This is very hello, Goku. You're looking well there. I like the leaves. The laurel looks good on you. I will come back to the other bit though as well. Now this causes the shield modulations to drop on that bird of prey, which causes the Schrodinger's effect to pass through the Klingon ship. And oh my god, sorry, you probably think I'm going to up the Proto-Klingons. No, I'm upping the flippin' clam. I'm sorry the ship got destroyed and everything. I don't really miss the Klingons, I'm not going to lie to you. But that poor little clam. Oh my god. Having got rid of the Klingons, which by my count there are 2 birds of prey left, there's still a Schrodinger's rift to close. There are so many candidates in this episode for Latinum ups. I'm very happy with what we picked because, yes, Captain Freeman believing Mariner and Boimler, perfect. But so many moments, because they pay off arcs. Ransom grabbing Ma'a, for example. That's such Ransom's arc, almost completely paid off. T'Ana telling Shax she loves him. Things like this. There's so many different examples. Any of the ship cameos, but I realized that might be more of a personal thing because me and ships, you know what I mean? This was an episode that was hard to kind of break down, right? What are we giving the top up to? I just wanted to drop that across there. Okay, back to the episode. Right, we still have a rift to close. So the rift is still very, very active. The shields on the Cerritos have been weakened, which leads to the Cerritos being bifurcated by the Schrodinger effect. Now, You would think having 2 Cerritos is great. 2 Cerritos is more than 1. That's twice the firepower. But no, they take the chance to say it's the same ship. They're each half as strong as each other, and one set of controls another ship, and it's not good. It's not like they've just been duplicated. Hooray, we have twice the firepower. So it takes a little bit of trust, and it takes a little bit of letting go of control. Now, who better to let go of control than T'Lyn? We get this great, it's all very, very quick, but we get this great moment of, as the systems start to fail, Tendi and T'Lyn realize what needs to be done. They come together and they trust in science, besties. This whole scene of this fusion, of this coming together, again, very Dragon Ball Z. This is Goku and Vegeta, this is Goten and Trunks, and having T'Lyn and Tendi come together in this moment, which does regenerate, rejoin, stick the ship back together. It's such a, yeah. And also T'Lyn says science besties. Okay, it's an up. Of course it was an up. Are you kidding me? They then realize that they don't have enough power. Their gluon beam doesn't close the rift. Uh-oh. And at this moment, Malor finally arrives on the bridge, sees what's going on around him and goes, well, on the farm, when the river comes to... On the farm, when a river comes to destroy your crops, you can't stop the river, but you can build a dam. And Mariner gets it. She leaps over the counter, slams her fist on the control, and what they do is they don't seal the rift, they contain the rift. And through a process I don't entirely understand, they stabilize it? I'm not complaining. I don't completely understand how it all ended up as rosy-dozy as it did, but here we are. They listen to Malor, taken up. By listening to Malor, they save the universe. So Mariner's delighted, Ma'a's delighted, and they give him a big hug. And Malor's like, Klingons don't hug! Mariner just goes, shut up. Just as Ma'a lifts them both off the ground as well. Up. Keep your eyes peeled as well, because just in the background, think of that famous kiss from the end of World War II. You've got Shax and T'Ana smooching at the back, which I absolutely missed. It was Chris caught that one, so fair play, Chris. This leads us to our coda. 3 birds of prey fly away. I will, however, give them a pass because clearly a little bit of time has gone by. Ma'a, Malor, and Kalara, nice to see her again, along with Malor's Targ, are now in control, in command of Relga's fleet. So, okay, right. I was looking at the like, how many ships we got here? I will allow for the fact that a 3rd bird of prey arrived in the interim. Lovely to see Ma'a now controls his own fleet. You have some lovely looking ships there, so obviously I'm going to go into that in citation and observations, but Starfleet's new mission now is to keep a guardian at the gate, if you will, in the form of the very analog, tachyon-proof Starbase 80 gets a whole new lease of life by becoming effectively Lower Deck's take on Deep Space Nine. Taken up. There is a trade-off. For Starbase 80 to raise its prestige, they need a new commander. Cassie is going to stay in charge of the running of Starbase 80, whereas Captain Carol Freeman has been assigned to monitor and supervise the missions passing in and out of the Rift. You know, we see the Anaximander coming through, so we know it's stable, gorgeous. I'm delighted because hello spin-off potential there. Do you know what I mean? Like, do you know what I mean? Anyway, she won't be alone. She will be joined by Admiral Freeman as well. So they have a lovely little moment of, we get to spend time together again. He's like, golf course though. The goodbye on the shuttle bay of the Cerritos, even though they don't get a shuttle. No, Freeman arrives in a shuttle. That's why. Anyway, I digress. The goodbye on the shuttle deck of the Cerritos it's again bittersweet. As Mariner says to Freeman, who's going to throw me in jail now? Taken up. But Freeman is sure that she doesn't need her to be there anymore. And it's all just very warm and lovely, and arcs, so many arcs. I love that word, arcs. Speaking of arcs, Rutherford. In the rush to solve everything, and you didn't think I'd forgotten, did you? In the rush to solve everything and adapt the Cerritos to work within the rift, all that fun stuff, Rutherford has this moment of realization where the problems that he's been experiencing have been entirely with his implant, not with the ship. In the spirit of I love lower decks, it's fine. It was a little bit rushed, I won't lie. I think poor Rutherford got the short straw in this episode, but it does lead to a couple of funny scenes, like for example, Livik cheering on Rutherford, that's fun, but also Rutherford sans implant and sans dopamine inhibitor arriving in the mess hall with Tendi and T'Lyn, and Tendi is overjoyed. I mean, like, you look so handsome, and he's immediately embarrassed by this because he's now feeling the full whack of emotions that he's always had, but, you know, Vulcan implant. And of course, this leads immediately for T'Lyn to go, I was unaware that you two had a romantic engagement. But I really don't think they do. I'm not sure, actually. I think he might now feel something a little bit more, but Tendi hasn't changed. I think they will have to navigate this new development in their friendship. It's an up for me at the end of the day. You know, Rutherford's journey, T'Lyn and Tendi, all of it's an up. It's satisfying in a way that I want more, but if this is where it's been left, I like where it's been left. It did not need a kiss or anything. No, I like Rutherford and Tendi as more friendly. I don't mind them flirting. I often flirt with my friends. You know who you are. But yeah, we get then this final speech by Mariner, obviously up, okay, just this whole scene, because it's a beautiful walk through the Cerritos. And not only is it beautiful, it's also got a lot of great sight gags. It sums up everything about the show. That it's not simply about Star Trek as a whole, even though of course it is. It's not simply about one set of the ship, which often Star Trek is. It's about the Cerritos, and it's about everyone that makes that ship run. And it feels not just an honouring of the crew of the Cerritos, but the crew of Star Trek Lower Decks. I mean, I can really feel the words coming from Mike McMahon and the whole team, speaking about the whole team here. It is so heartwarming. Just lovely. And also, oh my god, is that O'Connor? The one who went to meet the koala in season 1 episode Moist Vessel? Up! Is he the first lower decker to come back from the Black Mountain? But before we go anywhere, it's Beard Watch. Beard Watch. Up. He kept his beard. At the end of it all, everyone was convinced he was going to lose that beard. I'm pretty sure I was also one of those people. But he kept the beard toward the end. So, hey! I bet Chris is delighted that, you know, he didn't have to edit the Beard Watch graphic there toward the end. The lack of Beard Watch. We did it, Chris! Shocking. Absolutely nobody. Captain Jack Ransom steps out on the bridge. Up. Already, he knows this crew. He turns around to Shax and says, you know, Freeman said, I'm not allowed to let you detonate the warp core. Aw, unless you've been really good. Yes! And he speaks to Rutherford, and we get a nice okie dokie out of Rutherford. Everyone's there. He immediately starts playing people off against each other because he tells Boimler and Mariner that they can be co-provisional first officers because a little interpersonal conflict never did anyone any harm. When I say that was a contender for letting him up, like come on. That's pretty much where we are. We have Mariner and Boimler who are sitting either side of Captain Ransom. They are now acting first officers because although Boimler protests that he's a lower decker, Ransom goes, no, you're in charge of the lower deckers. And in fairness, he's not wrong. So all that's left now is to come up with his going to warp words. And, Mariner's like, come on, it'll feel natural, we'll just get something. He's like, I've got it. Engage the core. I love it. I really love it. It's an up from me because it's not just perfect for ransom, it also literally works. Engage the core. Hang on. Sorry, 1 second. Text from Chris. Every warp command ranked worst to best list coming up. Okie dokie. Sure, while we're waiting, do you want to join me at Cetacean Observations? We have a lot to get through. So we have that bird of prey that looks like a hybrid of the Cavort Burrell class and the D5 from Star Trek Enterprise. We have that Chihuahua Targ A177 dog from The Enemy Within. The whole plot seems to be very inspired by the House of Duras, the Soliton waves, the Discovery Klingon, the Discovery bird of prey. Their entire approach to the wave is very like when the Klingons encountered V'ger. It's like, we've got torpedoes, screw them. In fact, taken up for that. We cut to the Cerritos. We see in a wide shot, we see Gudgy floating along beside a benzite. I will claim ignorance on this one. I know I've seen that thing that Tillin's working on before and I couldn't place it. So answers on an addressed envelope, please. That cadet that's passing by Mariner's table. Now, I reckon it looks like Chris with glasses. We are absolutely convinced that this must be a member of the team for such a featured cameo like that. Keep an eye on him. Someone's going to point out who that actually is. Again, I think it's Chris. The whole talk of core bopple levels and isometric flingmeter and Treknobabble. Okay. Dr. Aaron, was this you? As we cut to Ma'at and Malor, we get that lovely Lower Decks Klingon theme, which I love. These spiked toes, of which we've seen on Klingons before. Malor going, wake me if Kalos makes another appearance. Flippin' love that. He really has a thing for Kalos, doesn't he? When Relga says, there you are hauling garbage. Malor comes in with, it's not garbage, it's wine. Come on. It's clearly the trouble with tribbles. Hauled away as garbage. Taken up. Today is not a good day to die, clearly a reference to the Way of the Warrior and Gowron's assurance that it is a good day to die. As they're talking to Starfleet, the third, the alien, if you like, on that screen, also the split screen, very evocative of What You Leave Behind when you had Admiral Ross and Martok and Sisko speaking on the Defiant. But that looks like an Aquan, who last appeared on the planet Argo in the animated series, episode, the Ambergris Element. They look a little bit different, but I do think, I think that's what we're looking at here. Just after speaking to the Aquan, they're talking about how the shields will protect the people on board the ship, but maybe not the hull. Freeman goes, the hull's kind of important. Yeah, remember when they lost the entire hull at the end of season 2? 'Cause I do. They discuss how the Schrodinger field might affect anatomy and tissue. We see a Vulcan, a human, and a Klingon in a graphic being switched to, I've got to be honest, it looks like Tuvix with long hair and a braid, a cactus, and a Klingon salamander, which is just like, what? And if you look carefully, they've obviously interrupted to Anna, who was still on the holodeck, because she's sitting there in her pirate's hat with the eye patch, which is just like when the crew of the Enterprise D were interrupted in promoting Worf in Generations and arrived on the bridge in their full naval regalia as well. Call out to the Enterprise is en route, that was a bit fun. Malor calls, first of all, his brother his Chadich, and then Mariner his Chadich's Chadich. This is going back to the episode Sins of the Father. The fake message from Admiral Freeman, if you look, there's an Akira-class ship sitting on the shelf behind him. It's not really an Easter egg, but as the Klingons are attacking the Cerritos, we do see that little thruster firing on the side. I see you, Boimler. I see you piloting. Well done. Full impulse into the field. It's very evocative of so many different ones. The Enterprise flying into V'ger's cloud in the motion picture, the Enterprise flying into the Mutara Nebula in The Wrath of Khan, the Enterprise flying through the barrier at the center of the galaxy in The Final Frontier, the Enterprise D flying into the certainly not Mutara Nebula in Best of Both Worlds, and very crucially, when you see it really start to disappear in Discovery flying through the galactic barrier in the episode the galactic barrier. We see a Freedom class, which, as I mentioned earlier, designed by Gregory Jean in his workshop, similar to the Saladin, the Archer, the Hermes, and the USS Kelvin as well, with these single warp engines. The Bird of Prey becoming the Barge of the Dead from the Voyager episode, The Barge of the Dead. We have a Kzinti, this makes me very happy. More cetacean operations, making me very happy as well. The Terran Empire version of the Cerritos appears. Sovereign class nacelles. We have the TNG Mirror Broken era logo on the doors. That's the very same as the Prodigy episode Cracked Mirror. And I do have to say on that, No, I'll leave that for a moment. Why isn't the Klingon ship changing? It probably is. They all look the same. Yeah, you've got a point. To Anna says she wants to use sneaky underhanded Kirk trick like the old days. Ollie's Kamehameha from Dragon Ball Z. You didn't think I knew about that, did you? Relga and crew turn into those proto-Klingons that we saw Worf turn into in the episode Genesis. And the dog's a clam. As they're flying through the field, now this bit was fun, they turn into a Cerritos Sovereign class taken up, an Oberth class taken up, a Galaxy class taken up, a Miranda class taken up. You knew I was going to up the ships. Also, the fact that Freeman goes, a Sovereign, I guess I'll have to take it. Yeah, sorry about you, you have to deal with the Sovereign class there. Cameo from Livik there as well. The Cerritos being bifurcated, very like the episode Deadlock from Voyager. The Science Besties entire animation looking very like, again, Dragon Ball Z. Klingons do not hug. Now, the first thing I thought of there was Final Frontier. Kirk is about to hug Spock, and Spock just goes, Captain, please, not in front of the Klingons. In Boimler's log, we get cameos from Kalara and the Targ from the farm. Now, we see the Enterprise E, which is, oh, go on, take it up then. I technically shouldn't give it an up because it doesn't do anything, but that's nice to see it. We see what ship is, I'm assuming, the Titan. We don't actually see the name on it, but if you think of the time and the era, it's probably the Titan. The Cerritos, of course, another Kali class, and a Parliament class as well. Now, if there's one thing that I would have liked to have seen here was something to tie it a little bit more to Prodigy. So that's what I was going to say about on the Terran ship, that logo is the logo that Terran Janeway and Terran Chakotay were wearing as their insignia in the episode Cracked Mirror. So I mean, the tie is there. It just would have been nice to see, I don't know, maybe it was too early for the Dauntless, but something like that. Starbase 80 arrives being towed by more Kali classes, which is just loads of fun. And also the fact that Starbase 80 is so much older, it's very evocative of the end of season 3 of Picard, when the Enterprise D was successful against the Borg because it was, as they described it, analog. We get quick visual cameos from the Anaximander, T'Pol, Harry's, Kim, William, Boimler, Lily Sloan, Garak and Bashir on that. Something I meant to mention last week is that Garak wears bright blue under his uniform, whereas Bashir wears a kind of a darker teal, or maybe it's the other way around. But there is a difference in the colors that go under those uniforms. That is actually from DS9, when we saw those uniforms being used online. In my head, I sort of relegated it as, oh, different universes. And then, on thinking of it, it's like, oh, no, actually, that's from Star Trek. So, mea culpa for missing that last week. But yes, there are different shades of uniform throughout Star Trek. We get a lovely cameo from Cassia as well. And I really like her because Nicole Byer is just deadly. One thing I really liked was that when they're talking about, the mission and, the most important ship, we pan up past the Enterprise E onto the Cerritos. It's evocative of that scene from the end of The Voyage Home, where we go up over the Excelsior and see the Enterprise A, but also just a reminder that as prestigious and wonderful as the Enterprise is, it's not the only ship in the fleet. Admiral Freeman complains no one's there to collect him and his bags, but as Mariner reminds him, you're not on a Galaxy class. He's got a little Starfleet fanny pack, a little bum bag. Oh, I'm sorry, I loved that one. We get another reference to the disinfectant gel aboard Starbase 80. Fully organic Rutherford, reminding us all that that implant was Vulcan in nature. We get then a lot of, obviously, sight gags. Someone's wearing a Choo Choo t-shirt. We have Winston Binger and Steve Stevens are swimming with Matt and Kimilu. O'Connor returning from the Koala. We have Miglimo and Kayshawn, who have discovered something new they like to taste. I realise how that sounds. Twaining, the green candle. Did he light that candle? And one of them's wearing a Ritos t-shirt. And Mariner, of course, reminding us that she is still Mariner. As fine as she is with everything, she did set her bed on fire. We get an okie dokie, we get engaged, the core and we get T'Lyn and Tendi being themselves. When they hear about talking goo, T'Lyn says, "What viscosity is the goo?" While Tendi says, "Does it have anything nice to say?" Ransom believes that interpersonal conflict and healthy competition will help them all grow together. Boimler complains, "No, we're still lower decks." "No, you're in charge of the lower decks." And as they fly away, on board Starbase 80, we get just one more little visual cameo that really pays off. And it's that bloke in the jumpsuit who we saw trying to catch the Pyrithian bat the first time we got a glimpse on board Starbase 80 a couple of seasons ago. And last but not least, Mariner's terrified that Engage the Core is going to be the warp noise, because what if this is a 5-year mission? One thing that I have to say I like about this portal at the end is that, although a little bit confused as to how it's stable, at least we know what this one does, and there's, a mission to continue doing with it. Does anyone know what the hell is going on with those freaky Borg and that big portal from the end of season 2 of Picard? That transwarp corridor? Can we deal with that, please? That is everything. And as far as we know, that's everything for Lower Decks. What did you think? Not just of the episode and not just of the season, but of the show. Let us know in the comments below. We will, of course, be analysing this for a while now. A few people have asked if we're going to do a season breakdown. We are. Don't know what format yet, but we will be doing that. It's been a lot of fun. As I say, for me, Lower Decks was my first ups and downs. I started on Lower Decks with episode 2, Envoys. It was my very first ups and downs for TrekCulture. And here we are now at the end of the show. It's a very, very weird feeling. But we have so much more Star Trek still to come. Before any of that, do make sure that you check out our interview with Mike McMahon. That will be available on the various places you get our podcasts. And he speaks about his hope for the future as well. So do have a listen to that. We have Section 31 coming up in the new year as well. We have plenty of plans for more ups and downs, for retro ups and downs. We have content coming out the wazoo, so don't be worrying about that. But thank you for joining us along this season. It's been a hoot. It's been a lot of fun. It's been ups, it's been downs. We got T'Pol. We got Lily Sloan. We got Gareth Shear. We got Harry Kim. And not only that, we got Brent Spiner. We got so much in this season. It's been a hoot. If I don't see you in the meantime, have a wonderful Christmas. Enjoy the holiday season. I probably will see you before the new year, but even still, have a wonderful new year. We're now going to go and just take a few seconds and just breathe. And then we will be back with the next batch of madness. So folks, thank you so much. Live long and prosper. Follow us on all the socials. Make sure you're following the podcast every single week as well. That drops on a Tuesday. You're wonderful. You're brilliant. Cerritos strong.